for so much of my life, especially when I was more on the atheist track, I would think like, wow, it's so crazy that the universe exists. The evidence is when you have nothingness, that's how existence happens. It is the natural thing that happens when you have the darkness, is you have something emerges from it. It's so magical. It's the basis of everything you've ever experienced and everything you ever will.
The container is now open. I'd like to tell you a story. It's about a thinker and a sage and a mystic named Lao Tzu, which really is just Chinese for the old master. Well, he was gonna leave town, become a hermit forever. He was like, city life is just not for me. I'm gonna walk up this path up the mountain and never be seen again. But as he was leaving the town he lived in and about to go up this path, riding a water buffalo, a big, giant, ridiculous looking water buffalo, the guard at the gate stopped him because, you know, guards, they can kind of tell when people have a story inside them that's just waiting to come out. And this guard was like, dude, you can't just leave forever without first writing down all of the wisdom that you have, being Lao Tzu, which, you know, as we said, was basically just Chinese for the old master. So Lao Tzu's like, okay, well, this is just wildly inconvenient of a time to ask me, as I was just about to leave. But I guess instead of leaving right away, I'll write a book. Very magnanimous of the old master, I must say. So he goes back home, Lao Tzu does, and for maybe a night, maybe 2 nights, maybe 3 nights, some small amount of time, he just writes down the verses that would later become known as the Tao Te Ching. So then he gets back on his water buffalo and is, you know, making his way to the path, probably covering his eyes so nobody else asks him to like write any books or anything before he leaves town forever and pursues his life as an immortal hermit. He gets to the gate, you know, and he hands the guard the book, and he goes off into the mountains and is never seen again. The Tao Te Ching remains with us, and it's, I think, behind the Bible, like the most translated book ever. For anyone, the Tao Te Ching is an endless well of wisdom. It's very short, so you can read it so many times in your life, and every time I read it, it's a totally different book, especially when I have really mind expanding experiences. I'll return to it and realize there's whole new dimensions that I had never seen before. And what's really special is that I've found circling to be a practice where we actually get to live out these principles and practice these values. Okay, so where does that leave us right now? Well, if you're not entirely certain what circling is at this point, go into the show notes. We have a lot of resources that can help you find your way and just understand what circling is. It's this life-changing practice, and you just discovered it. So this is like a huge day for you. I'm so excited. Welcome to the adventure. For the rest of us who do circle and are familiar with the practice, this conversation that's about to happen on this episode is really for you, because this is the beginning of Sigh and I going on this incredible adventure through the Tao Te Ching. The way that can be told, a chapter by chapter walk through the Tao Te Ching. On each episode, Sigh and I will read a verse, and then we will circle each other as we experience that wisdom, and then we'll connect the wisdom that we find there to life itself, and then more specifically to the practice of circling. It's really unlike anything I think that exists. I'm really excited. It's maybe the first of its kind. And some of the episodes along the way will be available for free in this podcast feed and YouTube channel. But the vast majority are only going to be available for our patrons at patreon.com/thecontainer. This is going to be a really important, advanced, and kind of like next level project for the container. And so we want to reward our patrons and also kind of limit the scope of who's listening so we can be engaging in community conversation at a really intense level. If you would like to be a part of that, then please become a patron. And if you are curious and just want to see what it's like before maybe making that commitment, then stick around, because this is the first episode of The Way That Can Be Told, presented by The Container.
So, over the last several months, we have turned to the Tao Te Ching a lot. And it keeps coming up in the context of circling. And working to create materials to teach circling, it's like there's almost no better text than the Tao Te Ching. And we decided to take a long walk through it with you all, the listeners, specifically the Patreon listeners. So while the first couple episodes are going to be available for free to everybody, the rest of the 81 or so episodes we do on the Tao Te Ching are going to be for Patreon.
Yeah.
And on every episode of this walk through the Tao Te Ching, we're going to read a chapter, and we are going to basically circle ourselves after having read that. We're going to talk about how it's hitting us in our path at that time. Because something that we also find reading through the Tao Te Ching so many times, it's like every time you read it, it means the same words mean something new. And then I think finally we want to work to each episode having some explicit connection to circling, like what do these lessons have for our practice explicitly. I'm really excited about it. I think this is the start of something so special for the container.
Me too. I already want to jump ahead to like things I want to say about just about the experience we've had so far reading the Tao Te Ching and then reflecting on what you just said. But instead, maybe we'll just jump right in.
Yeah. I want to do like a quick note on the translation we'll use.
Mm-hmm.
Because we will be reading from the Stephen Mitchell translation a lot. But there are like some chapters where he does these delightful little dances off on his own that stray pretty far from the original text. So I think that we will not always stick to the Stephen Mitchell, and maybe there's a world where we start reading multiple translations at a time. I would, there's really good resources online that allow you to read a lot of translations side by side. But Stephen Mitchell is really poetic.
I was just thinking we could put those resources
in the show notes.
Look
at the show notes and you'll see.
Because we have show notes.
Ah!
The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The unnameable is the eternally real. Naming is the origin of all particular things. Free from desire, you realize the mystery. Caught in desire, you see only the manifestations. Yet mystery and manifestations arise from the same source. This source is called darkness. Darkness within darkness. The gateway to all understanding.
I mean, if you're gonna start a book, that's a pretty good way to do it. Yeah, my experience listening to that is this sweetness, this nostalgic sweetness. I feel like I have heard those opening lines so many times. And you know, the beginning of a text, you're so fresh and you're so ready.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, you know, the beginning and the ending of texts are really, they really stick with you. And those opening lines are just so, just that it begins a book that's ostensibly about describing the Tao begins with the ultimate act of humility, which is to say, anything I can actually tell you about the Tao is not even the Tao. That the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. That's such a humble move that I notice as I hear it every time it wins me over. It makes me feel in my body so open and ready to listen.
I was noticing as I read it, this, like, I went from, it's like a wave that happens where I'm like with it, and then it loses me for a minute, and then it gets me back. It's like this, it's just like a little wave that happens throughout from beginning to end. And kind of within each little stanza as well. But there are certain words in this chapter that really, like, they pull me right back. It's like an experience to read and to listen to. Just like a, yeah, even though it's not in the original language, it's like, yeah, it creates these shapes in my experience of it. I don't know.
Mm.
Yeah.
I really resonate with the way that it comes in waves as a text. It like there's only so much I think I can take in at any given setting of the text. So it'll be like I'm reading through it or I'm listening to it, and there are periods where, oh, I'm taking a lot in. I can like sense this stuff. And then it's like there's a point where, oh, I'm like a little blown out by how wise and enigmatic it is, and then it starts to kind of pull away.
Yes.
From me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm noticing that happens a lot in circling.
Yes.
Where your like connection to the circle, it's you get into these rhythms over, like if you have a 4-hour event or something, you get into these rhythms where those waves come maybe kind of fast and then they leave fast, and if you're really in practice, yeah, my experience is when I am feeling very in practice, what will happen over the course of a 4-hour event is the waves come slower and sort of deeper, and I can stay in connection for longer.
Yeah.
But it's still a wave. It might be moving very slowly, but it's still moving and cresting and then receding. So there's a way that even there, I'm already feeling the way that circling and the Tao are so connected.
Whoa. It's wild. That is wild. And then there's the content itself connects so clearly to circling on so many levels. Like, for example, when he talks about the naming of particular things, like as it is, like as though there are things that are not particular, but how, like, in circling, like, particular things sort of take you out of the present moment. Something that is too particular is like, you know, it makes me think of personal history, or like it kind of, it names it, and then that takes it, that doesn't, it's like that, then you can't quite grasp what that is in that moment that's happening, like it's too specific.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like as you're circling, you like name and clarify experiences, and as soon as you do that, it's sort of like set in time, and then that moment is moving away.
Yeah.
So there's this like fading of it from the presence of the circle.
Yeah.
Can you read that line again from this first chapter on the naming of the 10,000 things?
Yes. Well, first it says, the name that can be named is not the eternal name. The unnameable is the eternally real. Naming is the origin of all particular things.
Yeah. So, yeah, right there, it's like, for the name that, the name that can be named is not the eternal name or whatever. That's like such a nice echo of the very first line. And it moves us from, okay, why can we not actually talk about the Tao? So this is like actually really good pedagogy. It's like, I can't actually teach you about the Tao. Why? Because when you give something a name, you've made it this thing, this particular thing. It's no longer in the eternal realm.
Right, you've pulled it from, you've like carved out a chunk of the eternal and made it into a particular thing.
Right. You bring it into duality. It's like, oh,
yes!
this is now a piece of mind. It's a part of the illusion of Maya. It's not the actual expression of the universe that you're interacting with. It's the mind creating this identity of like, here is this particular feeling I'm having, or interpretation of how you're showing up, or whatever. So yeah, there is such a, I'm like feeling very thrilled right now.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, there is such a trade-off in circling when you disclose something. And I don't think until this moment I've ever actually identified it, because usually you find yourself on the other side where it's like disclosure is this really important thing, like,
right,
yes, in the authentic relating 5 agreements, reveal your own experience, or like, or we've all been in circles where there are people who are not very forthcoming, and we want them to be more of a part of the circle, and it's like, we want to be encouraging and welcoming of those disclosures. But if we really sink into practice and wisdom with Lao Tzu as our teacher, we have to remember that as soon as we disclose something in words, we are now talking about the like word cartoon you drew.
Right. It's a
And
manifestation.
Right. It's a manifestation. Yeah. So you have this experience, then you draw a cartoon with words.
Yeah.
And all you will ever be able to talk about now is the cartoon, because as soon as you say it, like your inner words or like your inner experience starts being transformed by it anyways.
Yes.
So even you don't have direct access anymore.
It reminds me of when people say something like, in a circle, they say something like, I don't want to interrupt the silence.
Yeah, right.
Like, the silence is so perfect, I don't want to change it. Or, like, I don't want to interrupt it. And now, of course, everything's changed because you've mentioned that you don't want to do that.
Right.
Like, there's, like, so many examples of how just dropping... Like, it's almost, it is impossible to not, yeah, it's impossible to do anything in a circle without
immediately changing the circle. Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking how I've lost it. I noted that I made this move to like finish your sentence.
Mm-hmm.
And then I like stepped back and observed that move, and the part of me that was moving ahead to add like got lost.
Whoa.
Yeah. That's interesting.
And now we're here.
I feel like we're half circling.
Me too. It's interesting how there's this sort of, to me, it seems like a strong veer, which is interesting where we are in this conversation too, because it's kind of a veer. It's like, that kind of felt like that was done, and now we're in this new thing.
Yeah.
And in the second half of this chapter, it goes from talking about naming and being the origin of particular things, and then it feels like a very strong shift into free from desire, you realize the mystery. It just comes out, to me, it comes out of nowhere. It's like,
yeah.
Wait, if I'm free from desire, I realize the mystery. Like, desiring is, like, naming is desire almost. It's like there's something in the naming, or in the, it says it's the origin of all particular things, and I guess that desire has to be connected to things. Right? I mean, because there has to be a thing to desire.
Yeah, so there's maybe, like a way that once we start creating these particular things, desire now latches on to them. You know, there was something you said earlier today. We were joking around about, like, are there good desires and bad desires, or are there neither?
Right, you
there's
said
just
maybe
desire.
There's neither.
Yeah. And it's like there's this way that desire can be this energy inside of you that is it's just a part of the system of the, like, incarnate experience, and that then it focuses on something, and the way it focuses and what it focuses on can really have a lot of effects in your life.
Yeah.
You know, that you might label good or you might label bad, and it's so it requires this shattering of the eternal into these named things, which then become these mind objects that the desire can, like, grab a hold of.
Yeah, there's Free from desire, you realize the mystery. Caught in desire, you see only the manifestations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's like you're only seeing the names.
Yeah.
The manifestations are like the named things. You're seeing these, like, it's the twinkling. It's the sizzle, not the steak.
Are you enjoying this discussion? Do you enjoy a lot of the content that the container produces? Well, luckily there's a few ways you can really help us. The first couple are easy and free. If you're watching this on YouTube, like, subscribe, leave a comment. Those things really help us in the algorithm. It demands certain inputs, and those are the ones that we are aware of. If you're listening to this as a podcast, rate and review in whatever app you use and share with people who you think would enjoy this kind of content. And the best way you can support us, and the only way that you can hear this entire series where Sigh and I go through the entire Tao Te Ching, is by becoming a patron at patreon.com/thecontainer. By supporting us with small monthly donations, you will get access to the entire The Way That Can Be Told series, as well as other content that's in the works. We're really grateful for whatever support feels right to you. Now back to our conversation.
Yeah, and it just seems that as we're talking about it now, it seems so simple, right? Like, oh, well then, free yourself of desire. Easy peasy.
Yeah.
And then you get to realize the mystery. Why don't I just go ahead and do that real quick? It seems so simple, but it's extremely difficult.
Right.
Maybe one of the most... It's like this... There's another step in there that... I think there's another couple steps. Like, the identification... This is something that I got from the Gene Keys, but I really, really resonate with, which is that all desire does not have to be, you don't have, like, desires isn't going anywhere. And all desire does not need to be followed, but it must be felt.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's the identification with desire and the following through with some of those desires that cause the problem. Mm-hmm. Like, it's actually, but it's desire itself is not the problem. It's following through with it, which, you know, I'm thinking of, like, you know, cheating, or, you know, like eating a cheeseburger while you're on a diet, or, you know, those kind of things, like following through with that thing that you desire. Mm-hmm. Is where the problem is. But you don't have to follow through with it, but you do have to feel that you want to follow through with it.
Right. Fully.
So it's like, yeah.
Yeah, as opposed to, like, suppressing the desire as a way of not going down that path.
Right.
Yeah, I see a lot of wisdom in that. It's reminding me of sobriety. Mm-hmm. And how what the jiu-jitsu move I made to get sober, a little thing we like to call step 1. I can't. It was like I had been drinking and doing drugs and feeling like I had the power to control it. Mm-hmm. All of the evidence was that I did not have the power to control it. But the theory was that I could, and so I spent a lot of time and energy controlling my drinking. Mm-hmm. And my drug use. And it's like, as soon as I just admitted to myself that I was an addict, it gave me this this permission to just feel I need this out of that pain.
Yes.
I don't want to drink. I am an addict. And so it gave me that, what you're talking about, that pathway of just experiencing the desire for it.
Yes.
Yeah. Rather than something I'm
Whoa.
gonna do, or something that, like, I can't do so much and I need to, like, I'll only have 8 drinks tonight and I'll do, I can have 12 tomorrow. It's like, what are we talking about?
Yeah. It's like, that reminds me, or it makes me think of something like when, well, it's like constriction in general. Like when you constrict against something that like causes you a little bit of pain, it's like you don't want it to hurt. So you're like, the desire is for it to not hurt.
Mm-hmm.
When like if you just release and you just feel it,
Mm-hmm.
it's not that bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the desire can create this constriction around, and it like covers up just like the reality of the thing,
Yeah, right.
which is not nearly I guess it's different things, but often not anywhere near as scary as you think it's gonna be.
You're right. It never can touch the fear of stuff. Oof.
Yeah, I'm sure that's somewhere in this book.
Oh yeah, I kind of want to go on more of a slow crawl where we were.
Yeah.
If you don't mind reading again for us.
Free from desire.
Yeah.
Free from desire, you realize the mystery. Caught in desire, you see only the manifestations. Yet mystery and manifestations arise from the same source. This source is called darkness.
That is, such a mind-blowing turn, I think. So we have, like, the mystery is this term Stephen Mitchell is translating for the understanding of the universe beyond names and desire. It's like, you see the mystery. And then the manifestations are like the named world and like desire clenching around stuff. But those things create this duality that like actually both of those are already split from the unitive like truth underneath. And if we could go down there, remembering this whole time that the Tao that can be named is not the eternal Tao. So this whole time, the fact that we're talking about it, we're already locked into this duality.
Right.
But it's like if like let's just say we can do it.
Mm-hmm.
If we excavate down, both of those are coming out of the eternal darkness, which I believe from our recent experience cultivating and going through the cosmic orgasm, my experience was that the dark energy of yin is this eternal yes.
Yeah.
And it steps away and just says yes. And in that, creativity and creation happens. So it's like, for so much of my life, especially when I was more on the atheist track, I would think like, wow, it's so crazy that the universe exists. Like, why does the universe exist? And I wasn't just looking at the evidence, which Lao Tzu does for us, where it's like, the evidence is the nothingness that's the basis, that's like the first thing. When you have nothingness, that's how existence happens.
Right.
It isn't any wonder. It's a great big fucking wonder, but it's like it is the natural thing that happens when you have the darkness is you have emerge, like something emerges from it. It's like, fuck, it's so magical. And it's it's the basis of everything you've ever experienced and everything you ever will. Not to get too grand about it.
So, this source is called darkness. This source is called darkness would be like, or at least from, some of our research, the yin.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I have a thought about that.
Okay.
So you know how, like, in the yin yang idea, yin is created out of yang and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
They like carry within them. They come from the other and they carry within them the seed for the other. So it's like, like in the yin yang symbol, there's the little dot in each one because it's like, that's such an important part. So I feel like there's this thing that's not quite yin. It's like more yin than yin. It's the total darkness that's even
right.
further beyond that.
Right.
That's like kind of like ultimate black, like total darkness yin. And so in a way it's almost like not quite yin. It's like something even deeper or more back there.
Mm-hmm.
And out of that, yang arrives with that little dot of yin inside of it, and then yin with the yang in it arrives. So there's this way that like yang is both yin is both first and third, and yang is both first and second or something. It's like,
right.
Yeah, there's this way that it's like kind of messy there at the beginning. I don't know. Is that...
It's funny. I think you literally just said darkness within darkness, which was the next line.
Yeah. Can you read like the last few lines?
Yeah, this source is called darkness. Darkness within darkness. The gateway to all understanding.
Yeah. Whoa.
It also, the yin and yang discussion has me circling back to circling. Circle. Which is one of the first things that, at least in my experience of circling, like came up for me was this idea of, like sort of being able to hold one or the other as an intention, like in the space.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm going into this circle holding more the yin energy versus the yang energy, and like that helped me to really begin to even understand what those things were just by doing it, like practicing it.
Right.
That just came up.
That is, I think the weird is the weird acorn of this whole thing
Mm-hmm.
is that circling is such a great practice for actually feeling out Taoist concepts.
Yeah.
Actually working through them
Right.
and exercising them and being like, oh shit, this is real and I can like
Yes.
feel this. Yeah. So, yeah, I want to bring into the circling discussion that darkness within darkness. Because it's interesting. The first chapter begins with, I can't actually teach you any of this because as soon as I say words, it's over.
Yeah.
And then it ends with, okay, what's the great mystery? Or what does he call it?
The mystery and the manifestations.
No, at the very end, he says...
The gateway to all understanding.
The gateway to all understanding. Yeah, that's... Stephen Mitchell is I like that translation a lot. So like the gateway to all understanding would be to go into that. It's like to understand the darkness within darkness. It's like if you could get wordless. So they're very similar ideas. One is like a disclaimer, and the other is like that. If we can go wordless, which would be to enter the darkness within darkness, that would be the gateway to true understanding.
Right.
And it's funny, circling is such a verbal, talky, word-based activity.
Right.
Because we're basically sitting in a circle and talking.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like a lot, it's, a very reductive way to think about it, but that is one frame. And I think it reminds us that actually, if you're thinking about circling as a practice of words, you're actually not circling.
Yes. Right.
So, yes,
oh, that is so good. Yeah.
Yeah, circling is a discipline that is underneath that has manifestations in the words you use, and the way you use words manifest differently, but the practice of circling is much below words.
Yeah.
And I think that is like a really important thing that I want to emphasize, because it's something that so rarely gets emphasized, because when you're describing circling, you're doing it to someone who's never done it.
Right.
And I feel like there's a lot of emphasis on like, oh, don't be scared. It's not complicated. It's simple. Like you're trying to like disarm this this like the potential anxieties around like performing in this way in a group of people, and so much of our descriptions of circling are bent towards convincing someone that it's safe and okay to like participate, and like don't be shy. Basically, it's caretaking is what it is. The vast majority of circling description and instruction is caretaking, but the truth is that circling is very hard to learn like through words. I think you really have to circle with someone who knows how to circle and do that a lot, and like get the transmission from them in a way.
Right. It reminds me of when this became very clear. This thing about words became very clear when we first started experimenting with strong style.
Mm-hmm.
Because by bringing things so intensely into the present, it really shined a light on the fact that like there's actually very little that can truly like that really truly needs to come all the way to the surface of words,
right,
in the present moment, and that there's this like discernment that it takes, and so much practice that it takes for those like, and it's again like it can never really, I don't know if it could ever really be perfect. It's just that so many of the words that we use are not needed,
right,
in the present moment, especially when we're really right here in the present. I don't know.
Yeah, right. Shout out Joel Timbaum, Circling Curious up in Boston. I remember when we interviewed him, he was talking about like there's like a 20 or 30 word like kind of limit on your disclosure.
Yes.
Didn't he say that?
Yes.
It's like kind of there's this sort of soft limit about like if you're going on and on, you're not really circling.
Mm-hmm.
I think that gets to also that's one of those rules that shows you, or rules, I mean, guidelines that shows you how hard it is to actually talk someone into what circling is.
Right.
You have to it's hard to put myself back in that position, but it's so funny. being new to circling and then seeing all of these weird fucking seemingly nonsensical and disconnected like guidelines, like don't make your disclosures too long, don't talk about your personal history, you know, like don't talk about stuff in the room that's not the people in the or in you. It's like, what the fuck are we doing? And it's darkness within darkness, man. I got bad news for you. There is no explaining circling. There's like it's, you know, explaining circling is like teaching people to bowl by putting up the guardrails. Yes. Isn't it? And then just like, okay, now here's a ball. And then people throw the ball and eventually they're like, huh, a lot of times I throw this ball and it bounces around and then it knocks those things over. Is that what I'm supposed to do? And then you have a bunch of people circling being like, I don't know, are you supposed to do anything? And then, you know, so it's just, at some point they're going to get like, oh, I'm not supposed to be hitting these guardrails. I'm aiming for the pins. And like at some point you're able to bowl and then the guardrails don't need to be there. Is that a good analogy?
It is.
Okay. Yeah. I was like getting really into it. Naming it.
There's also, I was just looking at the text and like reading it backwards from the end to the beginning, and it's interesting because it's the gateway to all understanding, darkness within darkness. The source is called darkness, yet mystery and manifestations arrive from the source. Caught in desire, you see only the manifestations. Free from desire, you realize the mystery. Naming is the origin of all particular things. The unnameable is the eternally real. It just makes so much... It almost makes more sense as you read it backwards. Like, way more sense.
That is incredible. Like, something that people always mention with the Tao Te Ching is that it's very short. Mm-hmm. This is something that anytime you read any secondary literature about it, it always starts with, it's only 5,000 words, or, you know, it's just like, we get it. It's not very long.
Right.
But a lot of rereading value, so, you know, it's a lot of reading time. Yeah, but then I'm noticing, like, with such an ancient text, its ability to be read forwards and backwards feels like a sign of something that, like, it has really condensed wisdom that actually you have to interact with it in these different, almost like esoteric practices of reading. Now, obviously, this is also a translation, so it's like, you know, how much of that is Stephen Mitchell, like, just tapping into spirit? I think that's cool, too, you know, that...
Shout out to Coleman Barks!
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's this way that you can translate and kind of do your own thing and in some way, like, spiritually reconnect with Source, and it's, like, it can be even pretty substantially different, but actually it's
capturing.
Right, in a better way, maybe, than, like...
Well, a better way for us for now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, than other ways.
Yeah. So, that's all to say that that's a really cool discovery, and I want to start reading them backwards. I've never thought to do that. That's so...
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Well, now we've gone in a circle. Beginning to end.
That's right. And that's how you circle the Tao Te Ching. Circles within circles. The gateway to understanding. Yeah, do you want to do any closing thoughts on this chapter, the opening chapter?
I think my thoughts are going toward this, just the project that we're embarking on, like the enormity of it, the length of it, and excitement around like what it will be like. What it's like now and what it will be like then. I don't know. That's where I am right now.
Yeah.
About that.
Yeah, something that I discovered while we were doing this first one, that resonates with what you just shared, was that I realized as we were talking is that this is our chance to have circling discussions that really do lean into a depth of understanding rather than introductory understanding, or like it's our chance just as practitioners to like discover where we're at right now with circling and our understanding of the practice and where we are on the path. And like the Tao Te Ching is such a beautiful tool, and I think it's just so exciting to think of the places we'll go.
Yeah, and like how doing this will influence our practice. There's gonna be this like
circle.
Whoo. It's almost like an 8.
Yeah.
Or like an infinity symbol.
So yeah, and I want to make like this offer to listeners to participate in the conversation, to read the Tao Te Ching, to embrace it as the world's oldest, that I know of, guide to circling. I don't know of any older guide to circling. And and like if you become a patron, patreon.com/thecontainer, then you get to take this ride with us and join in on like what's gonna be such an exciting chapter of this journey.
The container is now closed. The Way That Can Be Told is a project that really brings together so many things that we're trying to offer the world. We're so glad you could check out this first episode. If you're listening to this on Patreon, then don't worry. All of this will be available to you. All 81 episodes, maybe more than that. If you're checking this out on the free feeds, awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. Consider becoming a Patreon to listen to this whole series. And with that, we have a nice way of closing. Keep it namaste.